Hi, I'm Brett, papercartridges.com. We're here at the shop in beautiful downtown Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and we're going to make a quick instructional video, and it has to be quick because this epoxy is hardening. But I'm going to show you a simple and cheap and easy way to make your own plugs that will work really, really well in the Pritchett, or if you really want to be technical and pedantic, in the Hay and the Boxer versions of what we commonly call the Pritchett, which was used, of course, in the British pattern 1853 Enfield rifle musket. So in the British service after 1856, the Enfield bullet always used a plug. And real quick history, again, this epoxy is hardening. But if you go back to the 1850s, it was difficult with the technology and machinery of the time to make your bullets and your gun barrels exactly to precise specifications. So in the United States, before the American Civil War, we had a very small army. We had the luxury of taking our time and being very careful when we made our rifles and when we also made the bullets. So the mini ball, the Burton Mini that we adopted right before the American Civil War, could fit very tightly in the bore and it could expand itself. But if you're cranking out a lot of guns, like if the Crimean War is going on, if an Indian rebellion is going on, you need rifles. The French are going to invade. We need rifles right now. You can't always maintain those precision tolerances with the technology available in the 1850s. So the British answer was to make their bullets dramatically smaller than the barrel size, but yet use a plug, either a piece of iron, of wood, or of kiln-fired ceramic clay that acts as an assistant to expanding the bullet. So think of like a wedge. So when the gun fires, that wedge is forced into the base of the bullet, and it forces the skirt, you might say, out into the rifling. And a plug bullet can expand a lot more than a bullet without one. So there is a universal way that you can make your own plugs without having to do what I did, which is source someone to either custom turn your own wooden plugs or figure out a way, God forbid, to make them out of iron or brass like I do for the P51. And that's simply by using a two-part epoxy and using a method that, I am not making this up, is somewhat well known as the Gibbons method. So the epoxy that I use, you can use whatever you want. You can even use like a Bondo, a filler for auto body repairs, but the epoxy that I use is this stuff called Magic Sculpt. A lot of other people use Milliput. Milliput is great. Basically, it's a two-part hobby modeling resin epoxy. And with the Magic Sculpt, I like it because it's cheap and it gives me at least an hour of good working time. Mix equal parts of it together, form your epoxy. And you only need two other things other than the epoxy. You need the bullet, which we have, and then your oil of some sort. So the reason you need an oil or some kind of a grease, we're going to use this to coat the inside of the bullet. That's to prevent your epoxy from adhering to the bullet. Remember, we want the plug to be able to move when the gun fires and force the skirt to expand. It won't do that if it is stuck solid to the lead. And just a very thin, I'm using a packing peanut. You can use a paintbrush, a Q-tip, whatever you want. You just want to get a little tiny bit of grease. Here I'm using the same mutton tallow I use for the cartridge lube, and just a very light coating on the inside of the bullet. So I'm going to move the camera around so you can actually see what I'm doing, and we'll get started. So again, first step, we want to lightly anoint the inside of the Pritchett cavity with our oil. Because what we are essentially doing is using the bullet itself as a mold to form the shape of the plug out of the epoxy. So the patented world-famous Gibbons method is to take about a pea-size bit of epoxy, and once you've done this a few times, you will start to just really get a knack for how large or small a little ball of epoxy that you need to form. And you'll be able to make these with remarkable consistency, like within half a grain of them. And you'll get very, very consistent shooting. So one way, the probably simplest way, is just to grease the cavity and then just take that ball pea of epoxy and press it straight into the base of the bullet. And that, once that cures, will form a hard plug that will do an excellent job of expanding the base of this .55 boxer infield bullet. And you can even see, you know, I just pulled it out of the cavity. You can see, hopefully, that we have molded a plug, essentially. That is, it takes exactly the right shape of the cavity. So that'll work extremely well. I sometimes will get slightly more complex with my plugs. So I, again, will take the ball of epoxy, I'll make sure the cavity is greased, and then I will slightly form it into a little bit of a cylindrical shape, and then I will flatten the top, because the tops of the plugs historically were flat. And if the cavity of the bullet is greased, you can press the plug in several times and it should stick to your finger so that you can form that plug. This is really difficult to do on camera. You can get the plug basically into a closer shape to the actual military version of the plug, which had a slightly rounded off flat top. We'll try to do another one here. This is, I'm used to doing it with my hands a lot closer to my body, so doing it this way is kind of a challenge, but I really want you to see what I'm doing here. So again, we grease the bullet. I'm going to form it into a little bit of a cylindrical shape, flatten the top, and press that in. Again, you can kind of see that's already starting to look like a plug, and I will press it in, work it in, and then pet peeve of mine is I don't like my fingerprints being on the bottom of the bullets. Not necessarily for crime scene forensics reasons, but it's just kind of bothers me to see my fingerprint there. So I will press them out on like a sheet of acrylic, and then I'll let them cure sometimes right where they sit, and that will cure into a hard bullet that will be a perfect, absolutely matched fit for any of these bullets. So real quick, we'll do a couple more. Once you get the knack of this, you can knock them out real fast. And why I don't want to discourage you from buying my Pritchetts, which will typically have a clay or a wooden plug, the secret is you can do these yourself for a lot cheaper than you can buy them from me. Again, not that I'm trying to drive customers away. I really appreciate your business, but you can make them yourself, because I think it's more important for people to shoot Pritchetts than it is for people to buy my stuff. I'm a true believer. So we'll do a few more here. You can see just how quick and easy the Gibbons method is. So you don't need a plug tray mold. You don't need to find custom. I made that one a hair too small, but that one will cure, and again, it'll shoot great. I have recovered these. I'll try to find some pictures of some that I have recovered. I've recovered them from the backstop at 300, 600 yards even, and these plugs are driven very well forward, and the lead has deep rifling engraved in it. I mean, they really, really do work extremely well. Probably because they are such a perfect custom matched fit to the base cavity. Like they are molded precisely into the shape of the specific cavity. So there's no variation to them. And again, I like taking my fingerprint off. And they're kind of fun to make. After the first 5,000, they kind of start to get old. But that's about it. I don't need to drone on and on. You get the concept. Just a very, very little bit of oil in the base. Make your ball. I will, again, kind of form it a little more cylindrical shape, and then I just flatten the top, and that will help form a plug shape a little bit closer to how they were historically. But if you don't do that and you just press the little P of epoxy into the cavity, that is still going to work fantastic. The little extra OCD step I put in it may or may not even give you any more accuracy or better performance. That's just what I do. So we'll knock a couple more out here, but that's about it. I don't really have much else to say other than you're welcome. And now you can either, I'd love you to buy some of my Pritchetts. I do sell them without plugs. Or if you use the very popular NOE mold for their Pritchetts, this method works great in those. It'll work well in any Pritchett because you're using the bullet as the mold. You don't need to go find a specific plug tray mold to make your plugs. And again, the performance is excellent. These will shoot great. Last one here, but I am Brett, papercartridges.com. Appreciate you hanging out with me. We'll make one more plug. Of course that happens on the last one, right? But I'm Brett from Paper Cartridges. Thanks for watching. I hope this has been useful to you, and I'll see you on the next one.